I am Bianca, 32 years old, hiding in the bathroom at my own wedding reception. My phone buzzes again. Mom, the same mother who manipulated me my entire life, is now threatening to ruin the happiest day of my life if I do not transfer $10,000 in the next 30 minutes. My hands shake as I stare at her text. My new husband James waits outside, unaware that my past is about to destroy our future. While I share how my wedding day almost became my worst nightmare, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe to follow my journey to healing. Growing up with my mother Margot was like walking through a minefield. I never knew what would set off an explosion of rage or manipulation, but I always knew I would be the one blamed for the damage. From my earliest memories, she wielded her emotions like weapons, carving away at my self-worth until there was almost nothing left. When my father left us when I was 8 years old, she made it perfectly clear that it was my fault. If you had been a better daughter, he would have stayed, she would tell me during her wine-fueled evenings. He left because you were too much work, too expensive, too difficult. I believed her. What 8-year-old wouldn't? The financial exploitation started soon after Dad left. Any birthday money from relatives disappeared into her purse for safekeeping. My first job at 16 at the local grocery store might as well have been her job, as my paychecks went directly to her for household expenses while she got weekly manicures and bought designer purses. After everything I sacrificed for you, this is the least you can do, became her mantra whenever I questioned where my money went. The pattern was clear. I existed to serve her needs, financial and emotional. By 18, I saw college as my only escape route. I studied obsessively, knowing a scholarship was my ticket to freedom. When the acceptance letter came from State University with a full academic scholarship, my mother spent a week alternating between guilt trips about abandonment and frightening predictions about my inevitable failure. I left anyway. Those first months of freedom were terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time, I could make decisions without calculating the emotional cost my mother would extract. I could keep my own money. I could breathe. The university library became my sanctuary, which is where I met James during my sophomore year. We reached for the same psychology textbook, our fingers brushing against the spine. His warm smile and kind eyes made my heart flutter in a way I had never experienced before. Our relationship grew slowly, built on a foundation of respect and kindness so foreign to me that I sometimes waited for the other shoe to drop for the manipulation to begin. It never did. Over 5 years, James showed me what healthy love looked like, what it felt like to be valued for simply being myself. James was the first person who helped me see my relationship with my mother clearly. "That is not love, Bianca, that is control," he said gently, after witnessing one of her manipulative phone calls. With his support, I started establishing boundaries with her. I limited our calls to once a week. I stopped sending money when she manufactured emergencies. I began the slow, painful process of breaking free. When James proposed on our 5th anniversary, I was overjoyed, but immediately anxious about involving my mother in our wedding. James came from a warm, loving family who welcomed me as a daughter from the first day they met me. The contrast between his parents and my mother was stark and painful. "We should invite her," James said when we discussed the guest list. "Not because she deserves it, but because you deserve to have tried everything. If she ruins this too, at least you will know you gave her every chance." My mother seemed surprisingly pleased about our engagement, though she immediately commented that James should have been able to afford a larger diamond. Still, her initial reaction was more positive than I had dared hope. As we began planning our autumn wedding, she occasionally offered genuine-sounding encouragement. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps she could change. Perhaps seeing me truly happy might awaken something maternal in her. Perhaps our wedding could be the beginning of a healthier relationship. "You look beautiful in that dress," she said during our first bridal shop visit, and I nearly cried at this small kindness. James squeezed my hand when I told him about it later. "Just be careful," he whispered, but I was already lowering my guard, already hoping for the mother I had always deserved. 6 months before our wedding date, the first cracks in my mother's good behavior facade began to appear. What started as gentle suggestions quickly escalated to demands about our wedding plans. "You cannot possibly get married at that venue," she insisted during a planning call. "What will people think? I have already spoken to the country club about availability." This was news to me, as we had already placed a deposit on a charming restored farmhouse that perfectly matched our vision. "We have already decided on the farmhouse, Mom. The deposit is paid." "Well, you will just have to lose the deposit. I have already told everyone about the country club, and while we are discussing changes, I have 40 people I need to add to your guest list." The venue cannot accommodate 40 more guests, and we are paying for this wedding ourselves, I explained, feeling my chest tighten with familiar anxiety. After everything I have done for you, this is how you repay me by embarrassing me in front of my friends. Her voice took on the dangerous edge I knew so well. Remember when you wrecked my car during your rebellious phase? Remember how I kept that quiet, how I protected you? This was her pattern. Any resistance was met with reminders of my past mistakes, real or exaggerated. The car incident had happened when I was 17. An accident, not rebellion, but in her revisionist history, every mistake became a deliberate act of ingratitude. The tension escalated when my mother met James's parents for dinner 2 weeks later. What should have been a pleasant evening turned into a showcase for her passive-aggressive talents. She criticized our choice of wedding colors while making it sound like helpful advice. She questioned whether our honeymoon destination was safe enough, while making it seem like maternal concern. Each barb was wrapped in just enough plausible deniability that responding would make me appear oversensitive. When she began suggesting that my future in-laws should contribute more financially since they obviously have money, I finally interrupted her. Mom, we have made our decisions about the wedding. James and I are paying for everything ourselves, and we are not changing the venue, the guest list, or anything else we have planned. The table fell silent. I had never contradicted her so directly before, certainly not in front of others. Her eyes narrowed briefly before she arranged her face into a mask of hurt. I am just trying to help my only daughter have the wedding she deserves, she said softly, dabbing at dry eyes with her napkin. James's parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, while James squeezed my knee under the table in silent support. The next week, she appeared unannounced at the marketing firm where I worked, carrying a small gift bag. Just wanted to make peace, she announced loudly enough for my coworkers to hear. Mothers and daughters always some friction during wedding planning. Her laugh sounded natural to anyone who did not know her. My boss Susan was charmed by her, as most people initially were. My mother had always been skilled at making excellent first impressions. Her manipulations were saved for private moments, for when there were no witnesses. Can we talk privately for a moment? She asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. In the small conference room, her demeanor changed instantly. You embarrassed me in front of James's family, she hissed, after everything I have sacrificed for you. Mom, I just want a wedding that reflects what James and I want, not, do James's proper parents know about your DUI, about your time in rehab? Would they want their son marrying a former drunk if they knew? Would your boss keep you in client-facing roles if she knew? My blood ran cold. The DUI had happened when I was 19, shortly after I escaped her control. Overwhelmed by sudden freedom and battling years of emotional abuse, I had made poor choices with alcohol for about a year. After a minor accident where thankfully no one was hurt, I spent 2 weeks in a rehab facility. The charge was eventually expunged from my record after I completed all requirements. I had been sober ever since almost 13 years now, but my mother kept this mistake in her arsenal, bringing it out whenever she needed leverage. The threat worked. That night, the nightmares returned. I dreamed of standing at the altar as my mother stood up and told everyone my secrets of James walking away, of losing everything I had worked so hard to build. James noticed my renewed anxiety. What happened? He asked as I checked my phone, compulsively jumping whenever it chimed with a notification. During a long, tearful conversation, I confessed my fears about my mother's potential disruption of our wedding. I did not tell him about the DUI or rehab. The shame my mother had instilled was still too powerful. We will limit her role, he said firmly. No speech at the reception, no special mother of the bride moment, just a regular guest who happens to be your mother. When I communicated these boundaries to her, I expected another explosion. Instead, she sounded almost contrite. I understand. I get overexcited. Of course it is your day. This easy acquiescence should have been a warning sign, but I was so relieved that I accepted it at face value. For the next 2 months, she was on her best behavior again. Her calls became less frequent but more pleasant. She sent a generous gift card for a home store with a note saying she was proud of the woman you have become. I allowed myself to relax, to hope again that perhaps we had turned a corner in our relationship. It was exactly what she wanted me to believe. The week before my wedding arrived with perfect autumn weather and a growing sense of excitement that not even my lingering anxiety about my mother could dampen. James and I had spent months planning every detail of our celebration, and now it was finally happening. Mom arrived in town 3 days before the wedding, checking into a hotel rather than staying with me, as she had initially insisted. "I do not want to be in your way," she said sweetly when she met us for dinner that evening. This consideration was so out of character that I found myself watching her closely, waiting for the mask to slip. The rehearsal dinner the following night went surprisingly well. My mother was charming with James's extended family, telling flattering stories about my childhood achievements and academic success. She even made a brief appropriate toast, thanking James's parents for raising such a wonderful man for my daughter. I caught James's eye across the table, and he gave me a hopeful smile. After everyone else had left, my mother asked for a private word. "Just a mother-daughter moment before your big day," she said, linking her arm through mine as we walked to a quiet corner of the restaurant. "I am so proud of you," she began, her voice warm. My defenses started to lower despite myself. "This wedding is going to be beautiful. Everything is coming together perfectly." I waited for the "but" that usually followed her compliments. "But I have a tiny problem," she said right on cue. "I had an unexpected expense come up. My car needed emergency repairs, and now I am a bit short for the hotel bill and getting my hair done for your wedding." She named a figure that made my stomach clench. $2,000 would get me through. You would not want me looking shabby in your wedding photos, would you? I hesitated. $2,000 was a significant amount, especially after all our wedding expenses, but causing a scene the night before my wedding seemed like a worse option. "I can transfer $1,000, I said finally. "That should cover the hotel and hairstyling." Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "That will have to do, I suppose." Later that night, as I told James about the conversation, he sighed. "One last tax for freedom," he said, kissing my forehead. "After tomorrow, we set new boundaries." The morning of our wedding dawned clear and crisp. My 3 bridesmaids arrived at my apartment early, bringing coffee and excitement. For several joyful hours, we prepared together, doing each other's makeup and sharing stories. My maid of honor, Dana, had been my roommate in college and had witnessed some of my worst moments with my mother. She kept checking my stress level with subtle glances. "I am okay," I whispered to her as she helped button my dress. "Today is about James and me, not her." Mom arrived an hour later than she had promised, breezing in with complaints about hotel service and traffic. She took one look at my professionally done hair and makeup and frowned. "That lipstick color washes you out completely," she said by way of greeting. "And your hair should be up, not half down like that. You have my weak chin, and this style emphasizes it." My bridesmaid Taylor, who had only heard stories about my mother but never experienced her firsthand, looked shocked. "Bianca looks absolutely stunning," she said firmly. "The makeup artist did an incredible job highlighting her beautiful features." My mother turned to Taylor with a tight smile. "I have known my daughter her entire life. I think I know what works for her face." Before the tension could escalate, Dana stepped in. "We need to finish getting Bianca into her dress. The photographer will be here in 20 minutes. Ati! As I stepped into my gown, an elegant A-line with delicate lace detailing, I saw my mother pull Dana aside. They spoke in hushed tones, my mother's hand gripping Dana's arm tightly. When Dana rejoined me, her expression was troubled. "What did she say to you?" I whispered as she helped arrange my train. "Nothing important," Dana replied, but her usual confidence seemed shaken. "Just some nonsense about making sure you do not trip down the aisle." I did not believe her, but there was no time to press for details. The photographer arrived, and we spent the next hour capturing the getting ready moments. My mother insisted on several poses where she was adjusting my veil or helping with my jewelry, creating visual evidence of a maternal bond that existed more in performance than reality. Just before we were due to leave for the ceremony, my mother announced she needed to use the bathroom. When she had not returned after 15 minutes, I sent Taylor to check on her. "She is not in the bathroom," Taylor reported. "I found her in the bedroom on her phone. She seemed to be arguing with someone." Later I would learn she had been calling various family members to complain about being sidelined in the wedding preparations and how unappreciative I had been of her help. But in that moment, I made a conscious decision not to let her behavior derail my happiness. "Let's go," I said firmly. "She can meet us at the venue." Despite the morning tension, the ceremony itself was everything I had dreamed of. The restored barn was decorated with autumn flowers and twinkling lights. James's face when he saw me walking down the aisle, my friend Paul escorting me rather than my mother, brought tears to my eyes. His hands were steady as he took mine at the altar. We had written our own vows, promises of support, respect, and understanding that felt especially meaningful given the relationship patterns I was trying to break. As I spoke my promises to James, I caught a glimpse of my mother in the front row. For just a moment, her carefully maintained facade slipped, and I saw what looked like genuine emotion on her face. "I am so proud of you both," she said, as she hugged me after the ceremony, her voice catching slightly. Against my better judgment, hope flickered in my heart once more as we moved toward the reception. Our reception began in the glow of early evening, with market lights strung across the restored barn's rafters, casting a warm, intimate atmosphere over our 100 guests. The old wooden beams and polished floor created exactly the rustic elegance we had envisioned. James could not stop smiling as we made our entrance as husband and wife, and for those first magical moments, everything felt perfect. The toasts began after dinner was served. James's father spoke first, his voice thick with emotion as he welcomed me to their family and shared stories of watching his son grow into the man who stood beside me. James's best man followed with a perfect blend of humor and sentiment that left everyone laughing and dabbing at their eyes. Then, despite our careful planning to exclude her from the speech lineup, my mother somehow had the microphone. My body tensed immediately, but to my astonishment what followed seemed heartfelt and appropriate. "Watching my daughter today," she said, her voice steady, "I saw the strong, beautiful woman she has become. James, you are getting not just a wife, but a woman of extraordinary resilience and grace. Bianca, I know our road has not always been smooth, but seeing you so happy today fills my heart." She raised her glass. "To Bianca and James, may your life together be filled with the love and understanding that everyone deserves." James squeezed my hand under the table as applause filled the room. Guests wiped away tears, touched by what seemed like a moment of genuine maternal affection. I felt a knot of tension I had carried for months begin to loosen. Perhaps this day really had changed something. Perhaps witnessing my happiness had awakened something long dormant in her. The evening progressed into dancing laughter and celebration. Our first dance to At Last felt like a private moment, despite the circle of smiling faces surrounding us. James whispered in my ear as we swayed together, "You did it. Nothing ruined this day." For the next hour, I allowed myself to be fully present to enjoy every moment of the celebration we had created. I danced with James's father, with my friends, with colleagues who had become like family to me. I caught glimpses of my mother chatting with various guests, seeming to genuinely enjoy herself. The first subtle sign that something was wrong came when I noticed her in what appeared to be an intense conversation with James's father in a corner of the room. His expression was uncomfortable, and he seemed to be trying to extricate himself from the discussion. My mother's hand was on his arm, her grip visibly tight even from across the room. Before I could investigate, I was pulled into a group photo with my college friends. When I looked again, both my mother and James's father had moved to different parts of the room. I made a mental note to ask him about it later, but refused to let worry creep back into my perfect day. It was nearly 10 o'clock with the reception in full swing when my phone vibrated in the hidden pocket of my wedding dress. I ignored it at first, continuing my conversation with James's aunt about her upcoming trip to Europe. When it buzzed again immediately, I discreetly checked the screen. A text from my mother, "Need to speak with you urgently." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Whatever it was could wait. This was my wedding night, and I was determined to enjoy every moment. The third text came as James and I were cutting our cake. "It is about your secret. Bathroom. Now." My hands trembled slightly as I fed James a bite of cake, my smile fixed in place for the photographer. As soon as the moment was captured and guests returned to their conversations, I leaned close to James. "I need to check on something. Back in 5 minutes." The bathroom was in a separate part of the venue, down a quiet hallway away from the music and laughter. My wedding heels clicked against the wooden floor, the sound echoing my racing heartbeat. I pushed open the door to find my mother waiting. Her face flushed from alcohol and what looked like mounting anger. "You finally decided to make time for your mother on your special day," she said, her words slightly slurred. "How generous of you." "What is going on? Your text said it was urgent." "It is urgent. Your Aunt Carol is in the hospital. Heart attack. She needs emergency surgery, and her insurance will not cover all of it. The family is pulling together money right now." My Aunt Carol had always been kind to me, one of the few relatives who sometimes saw through my mother's manipulations. But something about this story did not add up. When did this happen? Why did no one call me directly? It just happened an hour ago. Everyone knows you are at your wedding. They called me so I could handle it without ruining your day. Her expression became martyred. Always thinking of you even in a crisis. Which hospital is she in? I will call right now. My mother's eyes narrowed. There is no time for that. They need the money transferred immediately for the surgery to proceed. $10,000. Your aunt has always been there for you. Surely your wedding fund can spare that much to save her life. The amount shocked me. $10,000? That seems... Do you think I am making this up? Her voice rose sharply. Your aunt could be dying while you stand here questioning me. I took a deep breath, trying to think clearly through the fog of confusion and anxiety. Let me call Uncle Robert to confirm. If you do not believe me, fine, but remember your little DUI secret, your time in rehab. How do you think James's proper conservative family would react to knowing they just welcomed an alcoholic into their family? How do you think your new husband would feel knowing you kept this from him all these years? My blood ran cold. You would not. If you do not send $10,000 right now, I am telling everyone about what you did, about who you really are. I will make sure everyone at this reception knows exactly what kind of person you are before the night is over. Mom, please, not today. 30 minutes, she said, checking her watch. Transfer the money to my account in 30 minutes, or I am making a speech everyone will remember. She pushed past me out of the bathroom, leaving me staring at my reflection in the mirror. The happy bride looked back at me now with panic in her eyes. I locked myself in a stall and felt my chest tightening, my breathing becoming shallow. I recognized the beginning of a panic attack, something I had not experienced in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Dana. Everything okay? You have been gone a while. I could not respond. My thoughts raced wildly. Should I pay the money to save my wedding day? Was my aunt really in the hospital, or was this another manipulation? If I gave in now, would the demands ever stop? The bathroom door opened, and I heard Dana's concerned voice. Bianca, are you in here? I unlocked the stall door with trembling hands. One look at my face told Dana everything she needed to know. What did she do? She asked, her voice tight with anger. Through tears, I explained my mother's ultimatum, the alleged emergency with my aunt, the threat to reveal my past struggles with alcohol, a secret I had kept even from James, out of shame carefully cultivated by my mother over the years. Call James, Dana said firmly. Right now. He needs to be part of this decision. My finger hovered over his name in my phone. What if it changes how he sees me? That man has looked at you all day like you hung the moon. Trust him, Bianca. James appeared at the bathroom doorway 3 minutes later, concern etched across his features. Dana discreetly slipped out to give us privacy. What is happening? He asked gently, taking my hands in his. The truth poured out of me, not just about my mother's current threat, but about the past I had kept hidden. My struggles after escaping her control. The DUI when I was 19. The 2 weeks in rehab that had set me on a path to sobriety I had maintained ever since. I was going to tell you so many times, I finished, tears streaming down my face. But she made it seem so shameful, so defining. I was afraid of losing you. James wiped my tears away with his thumb, his expression serious but soft. Bianca, I love you, all of you, including your past, including your struggles. Those experiences helped make you the incredible woman I married today. She is threatening to tell everyone if I do not give her $10,000 in the next 20 minutes. His jaw tightened. And if you pay what happens next month when she needs more money, or next year, this will never end unless we end it. But the wedding is already perfect because I married you. Nothing she says can change that. We talked through our options rapidly. James suggested we verify my aunt's condition first. A quick call to my uncle confirmed what I had suspected: my aunt was perfectly fine enjoying a vacation in Florida. The revelation solidified my resolve. I am done letting her control me through shame and manipulation. I said, a new strength in my voice. It ends today. We rejoined the reception hand in hand. My mother watched us from beside the bar, her expression triumphant when she saw me approach. She clearly believed I was coming to tell her the money had been transferred. Give me the microphone, I whispered to the DJ, who handed it over with a confused smile. My hands trembled as I stepped into the center of the dance floor, but James's steady presence beside me gave me courage. The music faded and conversation gradually quieted as guests turned toward me expectantly. Thank you all for celebrating with us today. I began, my voice stronger than I expected. Being surrounded by such genuine love and support means more to me than you can imagine." I took a deep breath, feeling James squeeze my hand encouragingly. "Some of you know that my journey to this day has not been easy. What many of you do not know is that when I was 19, fresh out of a difficult childhood and struggling to find my way, I made some poor choices. I turned to alcohol to cope with pain I did not know how to process." The room was utterly silent now. I could feel my mother's glare burning into me, but I continued. "One night, I drove after drinking and was pulled over. By the grace of fortune, no one was hurt, but that moment became my wake-up call. I spent 2 weeks in a rehabilitation program, and I have been sober for 13 years now." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but not the horrified ones I had feared. Instead, I saw expressions of compassion and something I had not expected recognition. "I share this not because I need to, but because I choose to. For too long I have allowed shame about my past to be used as a weapon against me. Today, on the first day of my new life with James, I am choosing truth over fear." Without directly naming my mother, I continued, "I have learned that some people will use your vulnerability against you. They will demand emotional ransoms and call it love. Today, I am breaking that cycle." I looked directly at my mother now. Her face had transformed from confidence to shock to unbridled rage. She started moving toward me, but James's father, who must have sensed trouble smoothly, intercepted her, engaging her in conversation that effectively blocked her path. "What I have found," I continued, "is that real love never demands a price. Real love, like what I have found with James and with many of you in this room, accepts all of us, including our mistakes and our growth." To my amazement, several guests nodded in understanding. James's mother wiped tears from her eyes, and his father gave me an approving nod over my mother's shoulder. "So thank you for witnessing not just our marriage today, but my promise to live authentically from this day forward." As I handed back the microphone, the room erupted in applause. James wrapped his arms around me, whispering, "I am so proud of you," against my hair. What happened next was unexpected. As the music resumed, several guests approached me privately, sharing their own stories of recovery, of difficult family relationships, of breaking free from manipulation. James's mother embraced me tightly, whispering, "Welcome to a family that will never make you feel ashamed of your journey." My mother attempted to interrupt these conversations several times, her voice rising as she tried to claim I was making things up for attention, and always had a flair for drama. When she tried to grab the microphone from the DJ, James's father firmly but politely guided her away. "I think you have had enough to drink, Margot," he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Perhaps it is time to call it a night." "This is my daughter's wedding," she protested, her voice shrill. "You cannot make me leave." "No one is making you leave," he replied calmly. "But if you continue disrupting the celebration, I will have to ask our venue security to escort you out." The threat of public embarrassment, always her greatest fear, seemed to penetrate her anger. She wrenched her arm from his grasp and stormed toward the exit, pausing dramatically at the door to look back, clearly expecting me to run after her. I did not. Instead, I remained in my husband's arms, surrounded by genuine support and love, as she walked out of the reception, and though I did not know it, then largely out of my life. A brief wave of sadness passed through me, not for the mother I was losing, but for the mother I had never really had. Then James led me back to the dance floor, and we were enveloped once more in the joy of our celebration. Our reception continued well past midnight, taking on a deeper quality of connection after my unexpected moment of truth. Friends who had known me for years embraced me with new understanding, while James's extended family seemed to fold me into their circle with extra warmth. What my mother had intended as a weapon of destruction had somehow transformed into a bridge to greater intimacy. The next morning, James and I awoke to a flood of supportive text messages and emails from wedding guests. "Your courage inspired me," wrote one of James's cousins. "I have been sober for 3 years and never had the guts to tell my family." "The love between you two is the real deal," wrote another friend. "Thank you for showing what it means to stand together against manipulation." When we checked out of our hotel before leaving for our honeymoon, the front desk informed us that my mother had checked out hours earlier, well before dawn. She had left no message, no note, not even a goodbye. "Are you okay?" James asked as we drove to the airport. "I think I am," I replied, surprised to find it was mostly true. For the first time in my life, I feel like I am truly free. Our honeymoon in Hawaii was exactly the peaceful retreat we needed. White sand beaches and turquoise water provided the perfect backdrop for beginning our married life. For several days, I managed to push thoughts of my mother and the wedding confrontation aside. Then her voicemail came on our 4th day in paradise. "You humiliated me in front of everyone," her voice hissed through the speaker. "After everything I have done for you, this is not over, Bianca. You will regret this betrayal." James found me on the balcony of our room staring at my phone with a haunted expression. "She threatened to call my workplace," I told him, "to tell them I lied on my application about my record, even though it was legally expunged. She said she is going to contact your parents and tell them the real story about me." James took my phone gently and deleted the voicemail. "We will deal with whatever comes," he said firmly. "Together, but she does not get to ruin one more minute of our honeymoon." He was right, and I did my best to refocus on our celebration. Still, I checked my phone anxiously each morning, dreading what new attack might be coming. When we returned home 2 weeks later, I discovered my mother had been busy. Several relatives reached out to tell me she had contacted them with stories about how I had abandoned her and humiliated her at my wedding. Some believed her sending me disappointed messages about respecting my mother. Others who had witnessed her behavior over the years reached out to offer support. "Your mother called me crying about how you accused her of terrible things," my Aunt Susan wrote. "But I was at your wedding. I heard what you actually said. You never even mentioned her directly. This is just another manipulation." More disturbing was discovering that my mother had created social media posts portraying herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter who had turned against the only parent who stood by her. She had carefully curated photos from the wedding where she appeared loving and maternal, writing lengthy captions about her sacrifice and devotion being repaid with public humiliation. "We can have these removed," James suggested as we scrolled through her posts. "This borders on defamation." "No," I said after consideration. "Anyone who knows me will see through this. Anyone who does not, well, their opinion is not my concern anymore." James was unwavering throughout this storm. When my mother attempted to contact his parents with the full story about your new daughter-in-law, they blocked her number and informed me immediately. "We know exactly who you are," his mother assured me. "Nothing she says could change our minds." The situation escalated when my supervisor at work called me into her office my first day back. My heart sank, certain my mother had made good on her threat to contact my workplace. "Someone called the office asking questions about your employment history," Susan said carefully. "She identified herself as your mother and implied you had misrepresented your background during hiring." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Susan, She held up her hand. "Bianca, you have worked here for 7 years. Your work speaks for itself." I told her our employment verification goes through HR, and I terminated the call. She smiled reassuringly. "Just wanted you to know." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. And Bianca, whatever is happening with your mother, just know you have support here too." For several weeks, James and I navigated these aftershocks of my wedding day stand. We changed our phone numbers. We adjusted privacy settings on social media. We warned friends and family about potential contact from my mother. Then came the moment I had been dreading. One Sunday afternoon, as James and I were planting flowers in the garden of our new home, a car pulled into our driveway. My mother emerged looking somehow smaller than I remembered. "We need to talk," she announced as she approached, "privately." James stood protectively beside me, garden trowel still in hand. "Anything you need to say to Bianca can be said with me present." My mother's eyes narrowed. "This is family business, not for outsiders." "James is my family now," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Either speak with both of us or not at all." For a moment I thought she might leave. Instead, she launched into a familiar litany of complaints. How I had embarrassed her, how I had turned family members against her, how I had twisted the past to make her look bad. "After everything I sacrificed for you," she concluded, her voice breaking in what once would have seemed like genuine emotion to me. "How could you treat me this way?" I took a deep breath, feeling James's silent support beside me. "Mom, I did not publicly shame you at my wedding. I never even mentioned you in my speech. I simply told my truth." "Your truth?" she scoffed. "You were a mess before I stepped in. You would have ended up in jail or worse if I had not covered for you, paid for you, protected you." "You did not protect me," I said quietly. "You used my mistakes to control me, and it stops now." Her expression hardened. So that is it. 29 years of motherhood dismissed because I asked for help in an emergency. There was no emergency. I called Aunt Carol. She was on vacation in Florida, not in the hospital. For just a moment, genuine shock registered on her face. She had not expected me to verify her story. Then her features rearranged into righteous indignation. "I need to know where we stand," she demanded. "Are you choosing him over your own mother? I am choosing health over dysfunction. I am choosing respect over manipulation. I am choosing boundaries over control." I stepped forward, looking directly into her eyes. "If you want a relationship with me going forward, it will be on new terms. No more financial demands. No more emotional blackmail. No more using my past against me." Tears filled her eyes, and for a fleeting moment I wondered if she was finally hearing me. Then she spoke. "You will regret this," she whispered. "When you have children of your own, you will understand what ingratitude feels like." She turned and walked back to her car, shoulders shaking with what might have been sobs or rage. As she drove away, my legs gave out and I sank onto the garden path. James knelt beside me, holding me as the first real panic attack in years washed over me. "Breathe," he murmured, stroking my hair. "Just breathe. She cannot hurt you anymore." But in that moment, as air refused to fill my lungs and my heart raced painfully, it did not feel true. The power she still held over my emotional state terrified me. How would I ever truly be free? That night, as we lay in bed discussing the confrontation, I made a decision. "I need help processing all of this," I admitted. "Professional help." James kissed my forehead. "I think that is incredibly brave." The following week, I sat in the waiting room of a therapist specializing in family trauma, my hands fidgeting nervously in my lap. That first session was both painful and illuminating, as the therapist helped me identify patterns of emotional abuse I had normalized throughout my childhood and early adulthood. "What you are describing is a classic narcissistic parent dynamic," she explained gently. "The manipulation, the financial control using your mistakes as leverage, the inability to see you as separate from herself, these are all common tactics." For the first time, I had a framework for understanding what had happened to me. I was not crazy. I was not ungrateful. I was recovering from years of emotional abuse. 6 months after our wedding day confrontation, James and I had settled into a rhythm of married life that felt both secure and joyful. Our apartment was filled with photos from our honeymoon and wedding, though none featuring my mother. The boundaries I had established at our final confrontation remained firmly in place, creating space for genuine healing. My mother had not accepted these boundaries gracefully. Every few weeks brought a new attempt to reestablish control. Tearful voicemails flying monkeys in the form of distant relatives urging reconciliation, even a carefully orchestrated chance meeting at the grocery store where she appeared frail and forgiving in front of curious onlookers. "You look thin," she had commented during that ambush loud enough for nearby shoppers to hear. "I worry about you. Mothers never stop caring no matter how they are treated." Each attempt tested my resolve, but therapy was providing tools I had never possessed before. I learned to recognize guilt trips instead of internalizing them. I practiced responses that were firm but not cruel. Most importantly, I began to understand that her behavior reflected her limitations, not my worth. One significant breakthrough came when I joined a support group for adult children of narcissistic parents. Sitting in a circle with 8 others who shared similar stories, I felt a profound sense of validation. The first holiday without contact was the hardest, shared one woman whose mother sounded remarkably similar to mine. I cried all day, torn between relief and a lifetime of programmed guilt, but the second holiday I actually enjoyed myself for maybe the first time ever. My mother still tells family members she has no idea why I cut contact, contributed a man in his 40s. She literally screamed death threats at me the last time we spoke, but in her narrative I just turned against her for no reason. These stories helped me understand that my experience, while painful, was not unique. More importantly, others had walked this path before me and found peace on the other side. Their journeys gave me hope for my own. In therapy, I worked through the difficult realization that my mother might never change. "You cannot control her behavior," my therapist reminded me gently. "You can only control your response to it." This truth was both liberating and devastating. The mother I had always hoped for, the one who would one day see and validate me, might never exist. Grieving that loss became an essential part of my healing journey. James witnessed every step of this process with unwavering support. He celebrated my small victories and held space for my difficult emotions without trying to fix them. When I doubted myself, he reminded me of how far I had come. "Remember our first date?" he asked one evening as we cooked dinner together. "You checked your phone 17 times because your mother had trained you to be available instantly. Last night her text came in and you did not even look at it until this morning. That is growth." The approaching holiday season brought new challenges. This would be our first Christmas as a married couple and the first I would spend without any contact with my mother. Despite everything, a lifetime of conditioning made the decision difficult. "We could invite her for Christmas dinner," I suggested half-heartedly as we decorated our small tree. "Just a few hours. Maybe the holiday spirit—" James paused, an ornament dangling from his fingers. "Do you actually want her here, or do you feel obligated?" The question cut through my confusion. "Obligated," I admitted. "The thought of actually having her here makes my stomach hurt." "Then we create our own tradition this year," he said simply. "Just us, or with friends, or with my family if you want. Whatever feels like a genuine celebration to you." We spent Christmas with James's parents, who had become the supportive family I had always craved. The day was filled with warmth, laughter, and not a single moment of walking on eggshells, a stark contrast to every holiday of my childhood. In January, an unexpected letter arrived from my mother. Unlike her previous communications, this one contained no accusations, no guilt trips, no thinly veiled threats. Instead, she wrote about attending a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. "I am trying to understand," she wrote. "I do not agree with how you have characterized our relationship, but I am listening to other parents and seeing patterns I had not recognized before." I read the letter several times, searching for the manipulation that had characterized all our previous interactions. While I remained cautious, something about the tone felt different, less certain, more reflective. After discussing it with both James and my therapist, I decided to respond with a brief note, acknowledging her letter and expressing hope for her healing journey while maintaining my boundaries. I made no promises about resuming regular contact, but left the door cracked open for the possibility of a healthier relationship in the future should genuine change occur. Over the following months, our communication remained minimal, but notably different in quality. When we did speak, she seemed to be making efforts to respect my boundaries, though there were still slips into old patterns. During one phone call, she caught herself mid-guilt trip and actually apologized, something I had never heard from her before. "Old habits," she said, with what sounded like genuine self-awareness. "I am working on it." I remained cautiously optimistic, but protected my hard-won peace. When she asked to meet for coffee on my birthday, I suggested a public location and limited time frame. To my surprise, she respected both conditions without complaint. During that careful conversation in a busy cafe, my mother said something that stunned me. "I saw how strong you were at your wedding, standing up to me in front of everyone. I was furious at the time, but part of me was also proud. Is that the right word? You never backed down, not even when I threatened you with your worst fear." She looked down at her coffee cup. "It made me realize I raised a daughter stronger than I have ever been." The words were imperfect, still centering her perspective, but they represented a significant shift from the mother who had never been able to see me as separate from herself, much less admire my independence. "Thank you for saying that," I replied carefully. "It means a lot to hear." As our one-year wedding anniversary approached, James and I spent an evening reflecting on the tremendous changes the year had brought. "If someone had told me on our wedding day that your mother's ultimatum would ultimately lead to all this growth, I would never have believed them," James mused as we looked through our wedding album. I touched a photo of us during our first dance, my face radiant with a joy untainted by my mother's machinations. "The most important thing I have learned is that healing is not about forgetting or even necessarily forgiving. It is about reclaiming your story and your worth." The journey had not been linear. There had been setbacks, moments of doubt, days when old patterns reasserted themselves. But the overall trajectory had been toward freedom and self-determination. Perhaps the most profound realization came when James and I began discussing starting our own family. Unlike a year earlier, the thought of becoming a parent myself no longer filled me with dread that I might replicate my mother's behavior. "I know what not to do," I told my therapist during a session focused on this new chapter. "More importantly, I know why it was wrong and how it affected me. I can break the cycle." She smiled warmly. "The fact that you are concerned about this already puts you on a different path than your mother. Narcissistic parents do not worry about damaging their children. They do not see their children as fully separate people with their own needs and rights. On our anniversary, James and I returned to the venue where we had married. Sitting on a bench overlooking the same gardens where we had exchanged vows, I felt a profound sense of peace. A year ago, I thought I had two choices: keep paying the emotional ransom my mother demanded, or lose her forever. I reflected. I never imagined there could be a third option: maintaining strict boundaries while allowing for the possibility of change. James took my hand in his. You created that third option through your courage. You refused to let her define you or your relationships anymore. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the gardens, I thought about the long journey from that terrified bride hiding in a bathroom to the woman I had become. The shame that had once been my constant companion had largely dissolved, replaced by a compassionate understanding of both my mother's limitations and my own resilience. The greatest gift of this past year has been realizing that vulnerability is not weakness, I said, resting my head on James's shoulder. When my mother threatened to expose my past, she thought she was threatening me with shame, but speaking my truth myself removed its power to harm me. The secret that had seemed so devastating a year ago, a youthful mistake followed by recovery and 13 years of sobriety, now felt like simply one chapter in my larger story, a chapter that reflected human struggle and growth rather than defining shame. What would you tell someone else going through what you experienced? James asked softly. I considered the question carefully. I would tell them that you cannot change people who do not want to change, but you can change how much power they have over your happiness. True freedom is not about escaping control, it is about realizing it was always an illusion. As we walked hand in hand back to our car, I felt gratitude for the unexpected gift my mother's wedding day ultimatum had ultimately provided. In trying to control me through fear and shame, she had inadvertently set me free. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to follow my ongoing healing journey. Remember, sharing these stories helps break the silence that allows manipulation to thrive. Thank you for being here with me today, and I wish you strength and peace on your own path to authentic living.